Hey everyone. The purpose of business is to create and keep customers. I find that this was a quote from Peter Drucker, and one of the things that I loved about this quote so much was, I feel like as MSPs, we oftentimes forget this. One of the things that we focus on is on acquiring new customers. So we do a really good job of acquiring. We spend all our time acquiring them, but then we focus on all the technology stuff, and we forget that our customers also advance in what they need out of our MSP. So I want to make sure that we all understand we want to keep our customers as much as we want to acquire them. I'm Frank Marino. She already introduced me, but I think it's important you guys know a little bit about me. I'm an MSP owner right here in South Florida. I'm in the Fort Lauderdale area. I've been doing this for 20 years with Forthright. Prior to that, I was with others. So I would say my entire career is nothing but MSPs. I have been automating stuff probably since I was like 15 years old. That's what I do. I've been doing that for everything. I look at a problem and I want to automate that. If you know me, I like to talk. So if I talk too fast or I run out of time, blame Bruce because they only give me 30 minutes. But if not, I hope that you guys walk out here with at least one nugget. We're going to be talking a lot about the business side of automation. So if any of you are not on the client-facing side, there's another great session by Brandon going on right now. I will not be offended if you walk out. I'm just going to let you guys know that. I'm on the business side. So if you're client-facing, this is a great session for you. If it's not, I hope you still walk out with a great nugget, and hopefully you learn a lot more with that. So let me start off with like a story. I like to tell stories. Stories are a nice way for us to communicate what we're trying to say. And in this case here, I was working with a customer. This particular customer is a custom closet manufacturer. And so they came to me with a very interesting problem. They said, Frank, we want to eliminate paper. I thought that was a great way to start a conversation. I'm like, absolutely. So I asked a very logical question. Hey, what is the criteria for success? How do I know that by getting rid of paper, being paperless, you'll be good? He's like, Frank, I don't want to see any paper. I said, well, Steve, that's fantastic. So I'm going to come tomorrow. We'll set up this whole place on fire. And before you know it, we will not have any paper. He looked at me and goes, why do you got to be such an asshole? I said, well, hold on a second. I thought we were doing that. I asked you a serious question. You gave me a stupid answer. So therefore, I thought we were doing the exchanging of bad information. But after we got past that, he explained to me something very important. He started going on to me about what his real issues were. And by the way, I think that if you're not having those kind of conversations with your customers, I'm not saying you need to be frank, but feel free to do so. So let me tell you where this story went off through. So this particular customer, this custom closet manufacturer, they were doing all kinds of silliness when it came to their processes. They spent way too much time in the paper world. They were constantly putting in information into paper contracts. They were putting it into their CRM, so there was double entry all over the place. Hopefully you automation people are already, your spidey senses going off, because mine was livid during this conversation. And so we went ahead and we started talking about, where the other challenges they were. So they started talking about how they had a lot of human error. They would go through this process where they'd make the deal. We're talking thousands of dollars, several days later, and then they realize, oh man, we don't have this form. Or this is, misspelled, we can't run this contract because otherwise it's, some legal ramification. All kinds of silliness. And so we looked at this problem, we did what any other automation team would do. We automated it. So we started with a simple way of user interface that allowed for them to wizard-driven connect their data between their CRM that they were already entering information to, contract forms that they were using paper for. We took it a step further because we started understanding their problems better. So we introduced a concept where they had a secure way of sharing IP, intellectual property. And this was something that was in our discovery work that they learned from because of the fact that they were constantly sharing design files with their customers, and then the customer would no longer be a customer as they went and DIY'd that thing or took it to another vendor and said, here, please do this. And so that's very unfortunate. So we created a new way for them to share this information and ultimately have a way for them to keep the IP on their side. And so with all that, we automated all that stuff. We took multi-day process, turned it into a 15-minute procedure. Super excited about all of that. And then ultimately what we ended up doing with this is we found new ways of trying to get our business in tied with theirs. So as of right now, we're like a cost of goods sold to their contract process at this point in time. Rob Ray made a comment in his speech around how we change, how we sell things. So thank you, Rob Ray, for leading that up to my presentation. Because essentially at this point in time, we're like a $5 fee or something like that per contract. And they do thousands of contracts, so it's fantastic. And so, yeah, that's what I came up here to tell you guys, this great story about us, how awesome we are. Thank you very much. Oh, yes. Whew. All right. All right. All kidding aside. I tell you that story because we started off like every other MSP. We were completely replaceable. We were transactional. We thought executive meant we had fancy reports with red, amber, green. And what I'm telling you guys today is that if you really want to keep your customers and you want to move on to the next phase of what it is to be in your customer relationship, you need to become indispensable. And to be indispensable, I'm going to leave you with this one question. If you disappeared tomorrow, would your client's revenue generation be impacted? If the answer is no, just understand you are a vendor, like every other vendor. There's nothing wrong with being a vendor, I'll get to that, but you are a vendor. If the answer is yes, you have become indispensable. And this is a very important piece, because being indispensable means that you are now in sync with your customer. You have the ability to grow with them. As they're growing, you're growing. It's an amazing relationship. It takes a little bit to get there, a lot of disruptiveness within your organization, but I'm telling you right now, it's a great place to be. And let's go back to if you're just a vendor. Well, for starters, I still have plenty of relationships that I'm just a vendor. I just sell them Microsoft 365 or backup or something silly. And the truth is that it's totally okay. I know where I sit with that customer. I look at it as an opportunity to shift that customer so that they can say, we're indispensable. But you know what? I'm also indispensable for many customers. And the problem with that is that now I have a responsibility to constantly be working towards that. So how do we do that? Well, for starters, we need to work on something that I call the right partner framework. I'm going to go through this series. It's a 3-step series, so forth and so on. Hopefully you guys will learn from this. But ultimately, this is what we use in my organization. I am still refining this on a regular basis because nobody's perfect. And so, yeah, the first step in this process is know their business. And by their business, I'm referring to your customer, obviously. I'm not saying that you need to know what they sell, what industry they're in. Those are trivial things, and they're not going to get you to what you need here. What you need to know is something that is known in the industry as the quote-to-cash or order-to-cash process. Depending on the industry, they use those terms interchangeably, so just keep that in mind. And what you need to do is you need to understand every step of the way from when your customer gets the order all the way until they receive money for that order, okay? So how do you go about that? Well, it's actually quite simple. Somewhere in your relationship with your customer, at wherever you are, what stage you're at, I want you to ask them this question. How do you turn prospects into revenue? And then follow up with, and where does technology slow that process down? And so by asking them this question, what you're doing is you're engaging to the customer in a way that they can communicate with you. Remember, you're in IT. They can barely spell that. Their understanding of IT is very different than yours. You have an immense knowledge of these things, and they don't. So don't make that assumption. So let them walk you through it. Let them tell you about all the things that they have. Pay attention to any time there's a repeat process. Pay attention any time they express a pain point. And give them the opportunity or that out that says, you know, technology gets in the way sometimes. So that way you can go ahead and use that as an opportunity to capitalize on that moment. They shared that with you. Why not take advantage of it? But now that we have our quote-to-cash process, whatever that looks like for your different customers, different industries have different things. I'm going to often refer to one of my particular customers. We do a lot of manufacturing, so I'm going to continue to refer to my closet manufacturer. But ultimately, once you have all those steps, You want to then take your services, the ones you deliver already, monitoring, backup, security, whatever those things are, and figure out where your services fall in each of those steps, okay? And even if it's indirectly, guess if you have to, but just work it. So when you do this information, as you move on to the next part of our framework, which is we want to speak the revenue language. I don't know if that's a technical term or something. It's just what I use internally with my staff so that we understand when we speak revenue speak, okay? This is the language that most customers use. They want to drop the tech jargon and move on to words and things that are responsive to their business. Now, it's important to understand that the quote to cash or the order to cash process is going to help you learn this, because during that time period, hopefully, you start learning what they consider revenue. Not every organization looks the same on how that looks. A lot of them don't always align in the same process, but I have a couple here that may help you in how you can transform some of your services today to things that are revenue language. Admittedly, on the screen, what you're going to see now is words that you might find either funny, architecture, or super generic. And the answer is that's all true. However, that's the language your customer speaks. Don't believe me? Ask them if they understand what your backup solution does. Probably have no idea. Actually, how many of us sell backup to our customers? Anyone? Anyone, yeah? I can't see your hand, so I'm just going to assume somebody raised their hand. So appreciate that. But the point I'm trying to make here is that shift the language that you're using with your customers. So if you're customer facing, let's not talk about our backup solutions, but let's talk about our revenue continuity assurance, right? We do monitoring, security monitoring, all kinds of monitoring. Well, make sure we understand that what we're doing is revenue protection, right? These are terms that they're going to understand. Now, during that quote to cash process, you should have learned how revenue is equated. In some of my businesses, revenue is a very generic term. Everybody knows the word revenue, but some of mine call it engineering. Some of them call it production. Others, doors. I have a property management company that their revenue is doors. The number of doors is important to them. I do a lot of healthcare, cared for patients. So you want to find what those terms are in that quote to cash process. And once you have that, you can start now taking your standard services you do, whatever they may be, network optimization, help desk, all those things. Find a way to start shifting those terms and communicate that with your customer and see how it resonates with them. But these are basically the ABCs of our revenue language. It goes far beyond that. But this is a really good way to start and become comfortable with this language. Because ultimately, what we need to do is we need to become that indispensable that indispensable partner with our customers. And so therefore, we need to step it up again. So when we speak with our customers, one of the things that we have learned is that if all we do is focus on what we sell, and sure, we put some lipstick on a pig scenarios with our new language, it only going to take us so far. You'll definitely succeed, you'll definitely extend your relationship with your customer, but ultimately, the best way to get them to be forever customers, right, is when you can actually start measuring things that matter to them. And so the way we do this today is that our dashboards are not uptime or SLA percentages. We track that stuff because you need to, but that's not what we sit with our executive teams on anytime. We found there are 3 categories that matter when we talk about measurables in the revenue language. We want to talk about revenue impact stuff. These are things like your revenue protections that I mentioned, revenue accelerations, your revenue enablement opportunities. This is like net new business for them, presenting that. I'll actually have a case for that, so I'll show you that in a second. Or cost impact is another area, another category. And this is where you talk about those productivity gains, efficiencies. Yes, those are 2 different things. One is doing more, and one is doing in less time, so please keep that in mind. And then when it comes to risk is a conversation I'm sure we're all very familiar with. We're drowning in risk all the time. I like to throw that into the cost impact because ultimately that's where risk falls into play. And the last category is actually going to be unique to every customer, in theory, because this is around your competitive advantages for that specific customer that you're delivering on, that you're measuring against. But if I just put words on the screen here and don't tell you how to calculate any of these things, I would be doing you a disservice. There's a little eye chart there. That's actually one of my examples of something that we present to our customer. Sorry for the eye chart. I had to blur stuff out because it is proprietary. But whatever. Let's jump into how do you calculate this stuff. So of the ones that I mentioned, I wanted to highlight these three. Let's take something like revenue protection. So revenue protection is one of these things where the first thing you need to understand is you need to know your client's revenue. Show of hands, how many people know their client's revenue? Good, good, awesome. If you don't know it, ask them. Why not? Aren't you partners? Aren't you a trusted partner with them? Don't be afraid to ask them. You're not doing it so you can try to find more ways to get money out of them. That seems silly. On the contrary, you want to show them how we're going to protect that revenue. If you don't know what it is and how you're going to measure it, that doesn't make any sense. So let's take our revenue protection here and talk about, well, how do we calculate this? Downtime avoided. So a second ago, I asked you guys about who sells backup. A lot of you raised your hand, thankfully. So we all sell backup to all our customers in some capacity. I have customers that have these SCADA devices. Anybody know what a SCADA device is? Awesome, fantastic, good. But anyway, so we have these super important systems that are used in manufacturing in the production line all the time. And what ends up happening is that if that thing goes down, production stops. Therefore, there's no money being made. But don't worry, we're super cool. We got all the BCDRs, the DRAS, as the cool kids say, and we can go ahead and bring them back up within seconds, right? That's what we're sold them. We'll get you back up in seconds, minutes, whatever. That doesn't make any sense to them. They have no concept of that. So instead, I want you to take a scenario where you have those systems in place. You already sold it to them. I want you to calculate what it would be like if you didn't have that. What would that downtime would look like? And I'm not asking you for total hours. You need to tie it back to your revenue language. So in my case, the example I'm going to give you today, closet manufacturer, and they have a production hour, and they make about $850 per device per production hour. It'll probably take us a lot longer to put Humpty Dumpty back together again if that SATA device was down or whatever the case may be, probably 20 actual man hours. But they don't care what you lose sleep. That's what they pay you for. So think about what matters to them. Take that 8-hour downtime or 8-hour of production time at about $850 an hour, give or take. Anybody can do math quickly. I think that's $6,800 an hour. Sorry, $6,800 for that production outage. I like to display things in dollar amounts. I've just learned that customers, doesn't matter what industry, they really understand dollars because they're trying to make money. And so I present that information to them in my reports, whether that's monthly, quarterly, whenever we felt like getting to them, whatever it may be, and I would actually show them for this month, there was a $6,800 revenue protection that happened. And I think that's a really important way to look at it. Now, you may not feel comfortable showcasing that to your customer. That's okay. There are other ways. Maybe you don't sell backup. Maybe you just, I don't know, typical RMM stuff. How many of us have that license server that just has that service you have to restart like once a week? Anybody? Anybody use SolidWorks, QuickBooks? Oh yeah, those are the ones. Thank you guys. I can start seeing you over there. I can't see you there because that light is bright. But anyways, you do that. And you didn't want to get that call, so what did you do? You went to your RMM, whatever one you're using, you set up that job in the middle of the night, restart that service, boom. You don't get that call in the morning anymore. But you know what's funny about doing that? You actually just lost the only way, typically, the only way of unit of measurement you're actually going to present to your friendly partner there as to what it is that you're selling them. Isn't that weird? Instead, look at it this way. Again, let's say you didn't do that. Find a way to track that. So that way, what you're doing is you're going to take that 15-minute call that it took you to go ahead and learn what it is. Then you have to go remote into some system, go ahead and restart that service and tell them, all right, try again, and everything works. Cool. That's about half an hour a week. So take half an hour a week. Let's take the time it takes. Start multiplying that by what your production time is. Get a number. Present that information to your customer. And look, if you don't know how to do that right now, that's okay. Start collecting it for yourself. But these are the kind of things that you need to start looking at. So that's revenue protection. On the productivity gains, Instead of thinking about, like, we're going to do a server upgrade or file server or something like that, I want you guys to think about it like this. What is the actual benefit? Is it just because we're end-of-lifing something? Is that all we're doing? I don't know about you, but I don't have a whole lot of success of just telling my customers, hey, this piece of junk that you've been using for 20 years, yeah, you got to replace it. Why? Because Microsoft said so. It just doesn't really work for me. And then replace Microsoft with any vendor, I can tell you right now that I've never had a successful sale campaign with that. Maybe you guys do, and I would love to learn from you if that's the case. On me, I look at it differently. I look at it like, how do we gain productivity by doing this change? So that file server we're about to replace, in this particular case, we have our customer that has designers. They're constantly accessing the file server for file server things and designs. And so, you know what? We calculated what that would look like and says, oh, look at that. If we upgraded this file server to this new fancy little thing, designers who are doing 12 designs a month now can do 15 designs a month. I like to do things in dollars, so I take that. What's the average profitability? About $1,000 a contract. So therefore, for every designer, there's $3,000. I like to show that to my customer. But maybe you don't like the dollar thing or you don't know enough about that. All right, well, there's 3 more designs that the designer can do for your customers. Didn't add another designer. How many designers do you have? And then you start doing that way. These are the kind of things that you want to use when you're having the productivity gain conversations and as you're trying to position your stuff to your customer. The last is risk mitigation that I want to talk about. In risk mitigation, earlier we talked about the quote-to-cash process. And the quote-to-cash process is, so important to this whole framework that I'm telling you because it's how you really start learning your customer. And one of the things that I highlighted was listen to repeat, right? Anytime they have to repeat a task, anytime they have multiple times they're doing a task or anything tedious or a pain point, these are all risk opportunities for you to identify. And by you identifying these risk opportunities, now you can go ahead and determine what that impact is, what the losses are. I had mentioned to you that in my example, we had contracts, thousands of dollars of contracts that were delayed. Cash flow problems got introduced because of this. Imagine you sitting on a $50,000 closet. They exist. And, you couldn't run that deal. You couldn't run that money. You know why? Because you spelled the person's name wrong. That sucks. But now you pushed out those $50,000 another 7, 8, 12 days. And then you have to explain to your customer how you spelled their name wrong. That usually doesn't bode well in an industry that's luxury-based and, impulse decisions. So these are all the kind of things that you want to talk about with your customer. Learn this stuff. That's what you want to do. So we know their business. We know revenue language. We're talking to them in that way. We presenting them dashboards, however we present dashboards or reports. You guys present dashboards and reports to your customer, right? If you don't, start doing that today, please. Doesn't matter what it says, but just getting that flow, you really want to make sure that you're doing this. This is a practice. This takes time. And lastly, we have our last one, which is being a strategic advisor. Position yourself as such. And oftentimes, this gets confused with trusted advisor. I think we interchange these things often. When I say strategic, I'm referring to their business. I'm sure you've all heard at some event somewhere, some consultant. I'm not the consultant trying to sell you anything. I'm just another MSP owner sharing my story. So I gain nothing. I got no 12-step program for you guys. But you've probably heard about being at the seat of the table, being in the board meetings, all that kind of stuff. You know how you don't get there? Selling more technology. It's just not going to work. Unless they're technology junkies like the rest of us, that's never going to work. So the trusted advisor, they trust you for IT, maybe. Define IT today. IT is so different these days. So what you want to do is you want to enter into that conversation where you're bringing to them challenges within their line of business, and then hopefully solutions. Let me give you an example of this. So in this closet manufacturer, the one that we set everything on fire, we were presented with a normal business review like we always do. And I had been collecting information from this customer for quite some time now. And I told that customer, I said, Steve, I want you to remember 7 days. And I said to him, look, man, By the end of this meeting, 7 days is going to matter a lot to you. And he looked at me and said, well, what does 7 days have to do? I said, well, we ran 2,000 plus contracts. We've been at this, run $60 million through our solution with you guys. At the end of the day, not one contract has ever been signed after 7 days. And thus the 7 day rule has been presented. And so by doing so, what we got to is we were able to tell our customer, hey, listen, 7 days. How do we get that? We presented information that they never had. We had the entire process mapped out. We were able to automate all those things, guys. It's absolutely amazing that we can do these kind of things. And so internally, we call it the 7 day rule, but ultimately, these are your strategic impact things. Different customers have different ones, but this one I thought was a great one since we've been carrying over that story. So when you're having those sessions, add this. All right, I was given the 3 minutes thing, so I got to move fast. So how do I get started? How do I make this happen? Well, here's my little roadmap for the rest of you guys. I can't promise you that you'll do this in this time frame. This is the fastest way I can make it happen. But ultimately, it looks like this. Start by establishing yourself as the right partner. Go get your quote to cash process for some of your customers. Do it now. Do it next month. Hey, look, the first is coming up. Do it then. Reposition your services. Learn how you can change the existing services you have into that revenue language. Move on into collecting new measurables for them. And then ultimately, there's a thing you'll have to learn is how you transform your business a little bit by aligning to how you sell your customers, position that way, how you become growth engines within that. But unfortunately, I have to stop. So with that, I want to tell you guys the following. Go arm your MSP. Please focus on your customer. And I hope that by the end of all that, you'll learn and you'll be much more comfortable with the possibility that anything is possible and improve your relationship with possible. I don't know if I have time for questions, do I? Okay, I don't have any time for questions. I did that on purpose, I guess. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.